show a progression of anti-extension in the core, and we're going to start to add in a dynamic shoulder flexion movement where the core has to resist extension in the lower back from this overhead movement, and we'll add a little bit of rotation. This isn't going to be an exhaustive, I'm not going to show every single progression leading to adding rotation into it. So the goal here is just to show you how you should progress from static holds. Just doing static holds isn't going to give much of a transfer to sporting activity, which is the goal when we train athletes, but the stability part is important. We've got to start with the static stuff first, and then we start to get into more of the dynamic so it can transfer over to the ballistic, which is going to have a better transfer from the stuff we do in the gym to the on-field performance. So the first thing we're going to start here is with just a static dead bug, and we like to use this just to teach core stability. We get feedback from the ground. Having the hips up really helps to lock in that core set through the core. He's going to inhale through his nose. He's going to exhale out his mouth. This is really going to get this core turned on, rib cage down. So we got anterior core stability, which is going to help get these hips posteriorly tilted. Just think extension. So we get our athletes to do this so they understand that when they're holding planks that it shouldn't just be a crunching action. Right now his internal and external obliques are on, which are very important for all the movements that we're going to be showing here, especially when we start to add in rotation. So the dead bug, we can sit here for 8 breaths, and this is how long we hold it for. Once we get that down, we're going to turn them over to a front plank. Now we can use that same strategy we used on the dead bug. So we're going to set our core on the bottom here. He's going to inhale, exhale. He's got his core set. Now we're going to come up to our front plank. Okay. So the thing that a lot of things do, you can see he's kind of hunched over his back here. So we want him to get his shoulder blades to relax a little bit here. Okay. So we want a nice, solid core. Obliques are on, glutes, quads. He's stiff throughout his body here, okay? And we got a neutral spine. So this is what we're looking for on our plank. We want that straight line down. And this is where we'll start to, the hold shouldn't be any longer than 30 seconds before you start adding dynamic movements. Any longer than that, no athlete really has to sit there and hold their core for 3 minutes. So doing 3-minute planks really is really gonna be a waste of time especially if you don't have a lot of time to do this stuff. So out of our front plank, we're gonna go to stability ball roll. It's just gonna be more of a dynamic movement because the core is now gonna resist extension and a little bit of rotation because this ball is round. Shoulder flexion or an overhead activity. So we wanna get his core set. He inhales, exhales with a strong exhale so we get the obliques and core locked in. He's got his glutes, everything's gonna be lined up. He's gonna start to roll out. He's going to drop into his front plank. So this shoulder flexion activity is trying to create extension in his lower back and rotation through his core. So the key is we've got to keep that core engaged. Now the dynamic movement is shoulder flexion and resisting the forces that we're creating in the spine of extension here, specifically because we're going overhead, and a little bit of rotation because the ball's round. From the stability ball rollout, we're going to get on our knees. We're going to start to try to get to our feet now here. We're still going to be in shoulder flexion with this band on the dowel. We've got 2 bands on each side. If we want to add in rotation, we would actually just load one side of this dowel to resist rotation. I won't show that today, but that's exactly how we would do it. We would still continue to get more functional, try to get on our feet with resisting that extension in the upper back with flexion. So he's going to put his arms straight out. He's going to get his core set by that exhalation. Now we're all set. He's got his butt tucked under. He's got his rib cage down, and he's going to go up over his head. Now again, the core is trying to resist the extension forces that are coming into the back. We want to make sure we're all neutral through the spine. Now you're going to go to a half kneeling position. So we'll go from tall kneeling to half kneeling. Shift forward a little bit. So 90-90, bust. We've got a good extension on that back hip. Again, we're going to resist extension in the upper back with shoulder flexion. We're going to add a little bit more intensity. Now he's going to lift his knee off the ground, hold an iso lunge position. So we're going to start to increase the intensity of the movement. Resisting that extension again. Now he's going to stand up into a split stance. We can go to two feet here, but just for the sake of this video, we're just going to go straight into our split stance overhead dowel. And again, like I said, we can take one band off, do the same thing. He'll step over to his right. Now just the one band on one side is actually trying to pull him left. Now he's got to resist that extension, and he's resisting extension and rotation in his spine in that movement. We showed all the dynamic versions, and we will do ballistic movements starting on the ground because obviously the velocity on the ground is going to be a little bit less once we start to get to our feet. So as we're working on these dynamic movements, we're also incorporating these ballistics. So the first one, tall kneeling, just like we did on the dowel. So we're resisting that extension in the lower back. Now we're just adding more of a ballistic movement. We're increasing the velocity of the resisting of the extension in the lower back while we're going into flexion. Go to half kneeling now. So now we're going to get more of a functional position where we're getting flexion extension in one hip. Same thing, we want to resist that extension in our lower back. Now we're going to an iso lunge. Now we're adding even more more intensity to the movement, get it more functional. Now we're going to get to a split stance first. Don't throw it, don't step yet. Split stance, he's going to throw it without moving here. Next one, we're going to add in an acceleration into this. He's going to drive off that lead leg and finish through on the throw. Okay, now we're going to get to a step back overhead throw. Now this is going to be adding a rotational component into it. This is something that he's going to encounter as a pitcher in his sport. It's not 100% sport specific, but it's teaching him the coordination of getting that weight shift and then coming back through on the lead leg. Steps back, gets that overhead extension. So you saw that he got extension, rotation, everything that the core had to resist in order for him to create the power from the ground, transferred up to his arms for that high velocity throw. So we go from our dynamics, we go from static, dynamic, start to get to our knees, split stance, split stance standing, also iso lunge holds. And as you can see on the ballistic side of things, we'll use the same progression so the athlete learns to control each movement before progressing to more of an advanced movement.